Hey, Horror Movie Night. I just wanted to drop a little bonus episode because a good friend of mine, someone that I've known since I was 16, so I'm thinking you were probably 14-ish, has a book and is going to be available in just a few months, and I want all of you to go out and get it. So we'll get to talking about that book in just a second, but before we hit record, we were geeking out about the Friday the 13th children's novels.
Children's novels, even though they're...
Yeah, I guess they're young adult
they're pretty
novels.
much as violent as... Well, I should say that because my book's pretty violent too, so
yeah,
sorry.
But I think that what was cool about those books, and maybe it was just because at that time I was also reading like Goosebumps and Bone Chillers, which was like the second-rate Goosebumps books. I'm not sure if you remember Bone Chillers.
I think I still have some. Is that the Franken-Turkey one?
Franken-Turkey's one of them. Yeah,
I still have some of those.
My favorite was Little Pet Shop of Horrors. I was a big fan of that one. I actually just read one of them recently. And my takeaway, I actually texted my brother and was like, yo, this book kind of sucks, but the setup to this book is amazing. And like we could make a movie out of it because it was about a group of kids in Florida.
Of course.
And they
Florida.
lived right by, like their school was right by a swamp. And a hurricane is coming. So everyone's supposed to evacuate the town. But these two kids think that it would be cool to ride out the hurricane inside the school by themselves. And while they're there, they see a monster come out of the swamp.
Ooh, that is a cool setup.
And then everything, like they get out of the school perfectly fine. And then it's like the monster starts posing as their teacher and no one believes them. But like, I was like, no, scrap that.
Yeah, that's bad.
Do a full movie where it's like two kids trapped in a school that's being stalked by a monster outside of it. And like you use that hurricane subplot so there's nobody around. And then you add in like a police officer that's like looking for the kids and he gets like, they're just watching people get slaughtered outside of this school.
It's like Crawl, but with a monster.
I wanted to like Crawl so much more than I did. I love the setup, and then I remember just kind of being like bored of it midway through.
Same. I watched it on a plane and it kept my attention on a plane and I was like, this is fun and stupid.
I watched it opening night in a movie theater during a flood warning. So like the circumstances couldn't have been better for it to be terrifying.
And it still wasn't.
And it's still like I was just like midway through, I'm just like these CG crocodiles are kind of getting, they're looking worse as the movie goes on. And it was just like, how many fucking times can these people survive being attacked by these crocodiles? Like that was like where I was starting to get over it.
And the only part I really loved was like when they've like already established at this point that the crocodiles can hear you in the water.
Yeah.
And then the rain stops so they can't move anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the only part I liked is when the eye goes over them. I'm like, ooh, this is interesting.
It was such
and they're
a
like
good
trying
concept.
to do this stuff.
For sure. But what I was going to say back to the Friday the 13th books is you go through those Bone Chillers and those Goosebump books where like at the end of the day, everything's fine and no one really dies. And then like those Friday the 13th books, it's like every other chapter someone's getting slaughtered.
Yeah.
And they don't get into detail with it, but it's like there's a body count and it's a pretty hefty body count. And sometimes they do describe what's happening to the victims.
I remember I think I reread the first one a while ago, and I was like, wow, this is surprisingly violent for a 90s children's book.
And I like that, you know, like Jason Goes to Hell is a questionable movie to people. Of course, you know what I mean? But like it's a very divisive movie. But I like that they kind of took the concept of like Jason is an entity that can possess a body.
Yeah, but it was his mask.
And went with the mask. Yeah, like anybody who puts on the mask.
That makes more sense than having to like make out
heart.
with somebody and spread whatever demon thing comes out of their mouth.
Yeah, so I'm doing on August 13th, it's Friday the 13th, right where you're sitting. I'm going to watch all 10 movies live streamed with different guests. And man, that ending the night with Jason Goes to Hell into Jason X is a real like...
I genuinely love Jason X. I think it's a good movie because it's stupid.
I want to like Jason X more than I like Jason X.
It's so stupid, and it knows it's stupid because it's Jason in space.
I think that's my problem is that it's too in on the joke at times. There are great moments in that. Like I can never deny frozen face smash, good stuff.
Or the virtual reality.
The virtual reality scene. Yeah, like there's really good scenes. I also think it's just how.
Wait, hold on. The part where she like kicks him off of a catwalk and he lands on a giant screw and goes, "Get screwed," or something like that. And he like slides down slowly.
I mean, here's the thing. The biggest strike that I can put against any Friday the 13th movie, and Jason X falls into this category. I think Freddy versus Jason falls into this category. And I know for sure that Jason Takes Manhattan goes in this category. I don't need this movie to be longer than 90 minutes. No one's asking for that with Friday the 13th. Like, just get it. It's quick and done. That's why people like these movies.
Was the original even 90
original
minutes?
One's like 80.
I'm pretty sure it's like 80 minutes. Like
yeah, it's
82
like 88
minutes or something.
A lot of them are right in that like 80 to 90 minute range. And then all of a sudden, like Jason Takes Manhattan comes out and they're like, we need almost 2 hours to really tell
almost
this story.
2 hours, and only 10 minutes of it is he actually going to be in Manhattan. And let's also ignore how they get from a lake to
New
Manhattan.
Listen. See, this is the thing. I think I like Jason Takes Manhattan more than Jason X because I feel like Jason Takes Manhattan falls into that like Troll 2 category where it's like they didn't know that they were fucking up. They were very sincere the whole time. And I don't know, there's something so much more endearing to someone who's really trying.
No.
And they're just striking out. But let's talk about the book because as long as I've known you, you've always been a horror buff. You've been a little bit of a sci-fi buff from what I recall, but like we used to do movie nights constantly. We would go to theaters. I remember you were kind of the person who spearheaded some of the fondest memories I have of high school, which was like double and triple feature trips to the movies, and we paid for every ticket. We could have easily
we were nice fucking kids because we went up and said we want these following tickets. We're not sneaking in, we're supporting the arts. Meanwhile the arts were like probably these big budget blockbusters at the time. We did see some.
There was an evening, I remember one of them, I'm pretty sure we did in one day Napoleon Dynamite, Big Fish, and Garden State all in the same day.
It's a lot of early aughts indie films back to back.
I was like, we were supporting it, but I know we did Eternal Sunshine. Like there was. And it was like we had it so well planned out. We were like, all right, we're going to show up right when it starts, right when the theater opens at 9 a.m. on Saturday. We're going to see this movie. Then we're going to get a quick lunch. And then we're going to come back and do this movie at 1 p.m. and this movie at 4 p.m. And then we're going to go home and probably hang out in your basement or Holly's basement and watch a bunch of movies.
Exactly.
Like, it was like on every Saturday, 5 or 6 movies just crammed into a day. But it was awesome. I like fondly remember those Saturdays. I miss having the freedom to just be like, I'm just going to bounce from theater to theater for the next.
And I haven't even, because of the pandemic, I haven't even been to the movies since I think even before last year.
I got real sucked in on those when Movie Pass came out, and then it turned into like the AMC and Regal cards. Ooh. Oh boy, with the Regal cards, because you could see as many movies as you wanted in a single day. What we used to do on Saturdays, I would occasionally do on a Sunday. I'd be like, all right, all these movies came out this weekend. Sunday, I'm going to like show up at 9, see one, go walk over to Chipotle and get lunch, and then come back and see 2 more.
I think the last movie I saw in theaters was probably the Pet Sematary remake.
Oh, that was a rough one.
It was, especially since the twist is like, it's so great because they change which kid dies.
Yeah.
And they kind of give you like more.
Having the kid be able to talk about things. Like,
that's such a great idea. And they screwed it up.
They really fucked that up.
And they also ruined it by showing you in the trailer that it happens.
Yeah, that was a huge mistake. But like,
I think that was the last one I saw in theaters, which is so disappointing.
Oh, no. I saw literally up until I would say 2 days before the full shutdown happened. So like March 11th, I went and saw Gretel and Hansel.
How was that?
I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I can see why it's divisive, but like it is very beautifully shot, and it's a very unique. It's like a weird feminist take on the Hansel and Gretel story, and it's definitely one of those movies where it's a PG or PG-13 film, but I did not realize that when I was watching it because it felt very R.
It was Alice. Is it Craig? Is her last name?
Something. I know that she's had like a pretty good career.
I love her.
Yeah.
She is in like Silent Hill, which I actually like. I think it's a great movie.
I feel like a lot of people defend that as one of the better video game adaptations.
It is.
For sure.
It does have a lot of. It's too smart. It's all trying to do entirely too much. But she was also the Borg Queen in the Star Trek First Contact.
Yeah.
And she plays like she's a good character.
Yeah,
actor.
I think you would like
she's in. I love.
But then I did return to the theaters finally. I went and saw Cruella. That was my film back in theaters.
I watched that on Disney Plus. My friends log in.
Ooh.
But I loved it.
You know who directed
it was
that?
So weird, and I loved it
because
I did know who it was, and now I can't remember.
Yeah, it was Craig Gillespie, and his career is like he did Lars and the Real Girl, which is great. He did the Fright Night remake, which I think is one of the better remakes. Yeah. And then he did I, Tonya, which I think is like one of the best films. So I'm like, of course Cruella was going to be great. Like, you've got a dude who's got such a unique visual style. And like, that movie is just straight up like RuPaul's Drag Race, Phantom of the Paradise. Like it is the most queer-centric Disney film. And I don't think that it's like, it's not like in when Beauty and the Beast came out and like, we've got a gay character in here. And then like the LeFou dances with a guy for 30 seconds. And you're like, oh. He's like, no, there's a gay guy in this movie.
He's wearing leather pants. He is designing outfits for everybody.
And it's like, I walked away from that movie also feeling like, without saying it, you get the vibe that Cruella is, if not gay, very asexual. She has no attraction to anybody except for fashion.
And I just loved any scene where Emma Stone and Emma Thompson were just being bitches to each other, but it was like subtle bitchiness, like not on Emma Thompson's role, but Emma Stone had to kind of be subtly bitchy too, and it's just the both of them going at it. I loved it.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, and a big shout out to one of my favorite podcasts. They're good friends of the show, Fright School. It's a all queer horror podcast between my friends Joshua and Joe, and they Joshua threw a watching party at his house that he called The Devil Wears Prada, where they watched Cruella and then followed it up with The Devil Wears Prada as a double feature.
That is perfect.
I mean, especially, he told me that before I saw the movie, and then when I was watching, I'm like, oh yeah, this is The Devil Wears Prada 100%. So let's talk about the book. So you've been working on this book for how long? Because that's an important thing to establish before we talk about what it is.
So I actually wrote the first draft in 2015.
Okay.
And I just kind of, I wrote it really quickly, and it just kind of came out, and when I finished it, I didn't like it. There was something wrong with it. I couldn't figure it out, so I just set it aside. And then for about 3 or 4 years, I worked on it slowly, and I finally like figured out what was wrong with it, fixed all of that, sent it out, got my agent with it in 2019, and we did a little bit more work. He had some notes for me, so I took his notes, did some edits, and we pretty much decided at the end of 2019, we're like, okay, we'll do one more pass at this and just hit these little tiny things that we're going to tweak a little bit. And in the beginning of 2020, we'll go on submission for it.
Yeah.
And so I think in February, it was, I think around February 18th or so, he was like, all right, we're going to go on submission on this on like February 22nd.
Okay.
And so we sent it out to all of these editors. And I guess I should probably talk about like what it's about at this point.
Well, because you had a deal before everything, right?
No, it was.
Oh, okay.
It was March 13th is when it sold, which is also very fast for publishing.
No, I was gonna say, because you're like giving me this timeline. I'm like, wait a second. I thought that you had sold it just before, right when?
So we went on submission right before. It's just the submission process usually takes between
a few months to a year or so.
A few months to even, some people go on submission for 2 years at a time.
Yeah.
And
which,
mine, I think, was like 3 weeks. If you're wondering if you should
pre-order it, 3 weeks 3 weeks turnaround time is a pretty good seal of approval, I would say. But yeah, so you get this book made, or someone takes the offer, HarperCollins, a subsidiary of them.
It's Balzer and Bray. They're imprint in HarperCollins, yeah.
So what's the book about?
So it's about two teens who survive a viral apocalypse that destroys most of the world. And then the two of them have to kind of figure out how to survive in this new world where almost everybody's dead and all that's left are the people who have survived this deadly flu. So
lovely.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about you, and I was also thinking about everything that's happened in the world because, Netflix produced that show Sweet Tooth. And I was aware of the comic, but I was like, let me read the comic before I watch the show. Have you read the comic of Sweet Tooth?
I haven't. I haven't even watched the show. I've only heard what it's about.
Yeah. And I finished the first of the 3 trades. There's like 3 like mega trades. But yeah, it's like I think it's 7 years after they just described it as a random flu that no one could explain killed almost the entire population. Yeah. And any woman who gave birth during that time gave birth to like weird hybrid creatures. Oh. And now like people are hunting the hybrid creatures because they can't get sick. So they're thinking that if they dissect those hybrid creatures, they'll find a cure. So it's just from the perspective of one of the hybrid creatures just trying to survive in like the chaos. But I was like, man, why were so many people thinking about like how a viral thing could just decimate us?
I mean, it's been... there's been a lot of people talking about it for years and years and years. And it's like when that happened, I mean, it wasn't a surprise because we know that when Obama left the office, he had a pandemic task force and someone disassembled it entirely.
Someone just came in
right as soon as it happened.
Disappeared. So. It was weird.
So, I mean, there has been, and everyone also is talking about, like, especially with the vaccine, which I am 100% vaccinated. If you're not, you should be vaccinated.
Yeah, that's the stance of horror movie night.
There's, like, all these people who said that, like, Bill Gates is behind, like, all of these vaccination things. It's like, yeah, he is, because he has been talking about this. Yeah. He has been saying that there will be a pandemic, and it's because of global warming. It's because of climate change. It's because there's all of these issues that are
I'm not sure.
Together.
Let me turn you on to a friend of mine. His name is Q, and he believes that all those are made up.
Well, he sounds like a moron.
So you've got this book. I guess what's it? The secret where you put things out into the universe. Yeah. I'm gonna secret this for you real quick.
Do it.
A quick 3-week turnover, right? You're a film buff.
Yeah.
If someone is like, we want to option this for Netflix show, movie, whatever, how hard do you fight to like be the person that writes that screenplay or maybe even gets to direct it?
Right now, it's 0. I do not want to be involved in it anymore. Because
I guess when you've lived with something for 7 years, you just want to be away from it for a while.
That's part of it, but it's also so when it sold last year, it sold on March 13th, and it was the first day that Balzer and Bray, my publisher, they were working from home. It was the first day, and even in the email that my editor sent me, she's like, "Oh, we think it's going to be a couple weeks." And even at that time, I was like, I don't think so. It's probably going to be until like October. Yeah. Now we're more than a year on.
Yeah, we're 18 months at this point.
But I just kind of was like, okay, well. This is all like all this is happening at once. I can deal with it. It's fine. And then when you're editing a book, it's not just you get like one pass, you talk with your editor, and you kind of do whatever the edits are, and then it's done. It was basically all of last year. I had to edit this book while all of this was happening, and it was awful. And the other thing that was really annoying about it, so my editor sends, it's a development letter. So she'll kind of list out all the things that she wants me to kind of work on in the book. And in the first one, it was, had COVID-19 not happened, we probably would have been able to get away with this as is. Like, not everything, but like specifically the virus.
Yeah.
And having lived through a pandemic, seeing how people react, we had to change things to make it seem more realistic. Because if people open up a book and all the things that were in there originally, they're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Nobody did that. We've lived through this. And so that was, but we also didn't want to kind of
make it about COVID-19.
Yeah, we didn't want to pull from that. We didn't want to,
because I think everybody's getting burned out on like every TV show and movie having that angle,
and there were certain words that I didn't want to use, and so I'm like, okay, I'll figure out a way to do this. I'll incorporate some real life things, and I'll also still add some fictional things in. And so every time, there were so many notes in like while we're doing all these changes to the manuscript where I had to delete something because I would write it in the book and then it happened in real life.
Oh no, you had that stranger than fiction thing happening to you.
Like, I think we should just change this book title to Jumanji and call it a day. Instead of writing the end at the end, it'll just say Jumanji. And then all of this will go away. It'll be fantastic. We tried it. It didn't work.
Oh, well. At least you did all that you could do.
Yeah.
You know, like, when you're someone working, and I mean, obviously not nearly the same, but like doing podcasts. We not a single show that I produce missed a week.
Yeah.
Like, and that was tough.
Yeah.
But it was like, in my mind, I was like, I need distraction.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if I'm climbing the walls looking for distraction, like, it's my job as an entertainer to like provide that distraction. And then obviously as things continue to get more and more awful as time went on, it was like, okay, we're still providing entertainment, but we're also providing information and like PSAs and, you know, you're going to be doing Geekscape soon. And Jonathan was amazing with that of like being like, yo, go get vaccinated, do this. This is important. Like this is stuff that needs to happen. So it is something that is very unique and interesting that we've all lived through. And I like that the angle that I've been hearing on a lot of shows now is, we all know that it's still a thing, like the pandemic is still happening, but I think instead of saying that where it falls on deaf ears, now the thing that I keep hearing people saying is like, hey, it feels great to be back to normal. It would really suck if we had to stop doing this and go back to the way it was. So like, if you haven't yet, I really recommend going and getting that Fauci ouchie as quickly as possible. So like, that's kind of the angle I'm taking with it, is like, this is going to sound really shitty, and I'm sure you're probably at this point too. I did everything I was supposed to do. Yeah. I'm protected. I'm done worrying about you not wanting to do this. Like,
I'm more, the only people that I'm caring about right at this point is the kids who can't get vaccinated. Yeah. If you are an adult, if you can get vaccinated and you have chosen not to get vaccinated, I find it very difficult to feel bad.
No, 100%.
I know that I should. I know I'm a caring person.
No, you are, but still. We've been wanting to do conventions. We've been wanting to travel. We've been wanting to do a whole lot of stuff, and we've done all the things that we're supposed to do in order to do those things. Yes. So if you choose not to do those and you become one of the 99% of the unvaccinated people that are getting COVID.
And I know that there are still some people who can't get it in, I don't really know.
Like different countries, kind of, and there's different, like,
it's especially different countries, but I'm not traveling to like those countries, so it's like,
I'm just trying to travel inside the United States right now. But like, even I know like, one of my siblings, they're expecting a baby in the next month. They're like, I'd really just rather wait until I give birth and then get the shot, because I just don't know. Like, yeah, they could say, oh, for sure there will be no side effects if we give you this while you're pregnant, but like, there also could be. Yeah. So why not just have the natural birth, and then like a week later, boom, like let's get moving.
During the natural birth, as soon as the baby's out, you just go, now, do it now.
Yeah, you're already in enough pain. What's the worst that can happen? And you're already in the hospital, so you're there when it's really shitty.
But hopefully my book does get option, but if that happens, I feel like at this point I don't want anything to do with it. It could change, but I'd be like, you go do it and take all of that and make it whatever you're going to make it into. But I feel like with So like Stephen King has said that he likes kind of giving a lot of power away with his books. He just like signs the paperwork and says, make it whatever you want.
Yeah, and he has those $1 deals with like college students and stuff, which I think is awesome. Stephen King is a really awesome person.
He is.
As much as we can trash some of his later novels. Like
I like some of his later stuff. I mean,
I like Cell a lot, actually.
I like Cell.
Yeah.
I think that one's fun. I like Doomakey, which nobody ever reads. I thought it was great.
I mean,
it's
I've
very
read,
strange.
I've tried to read all of his stuff. I know I've read Doomakey, but I don't remember too much about it.
And I think 11/22/63 is his best book.
I agree with that. That book is. I think that he tends to. How do I word this? The thicker and longer his books are, the more I expect them to not really satisfy, because I feel like he lacks editing himself a lot of the time. But that's probably the longest book that I think is the most deserving for the length that it is, because it really is a ride. Like, you are on a psychological. That was one that I could not put down. I was like, this is fantastic.
That's one of the few ones I've read by him where I actually read it twice, and it's a 600-page book. And to read a 600-page book twice, and I'm a slow reader, surprisingly.
That's a big ask. I also like what the heck was it called? He did like a lot of. I think people don't appreciate his non-horror stuff enough. Like, I love Eyes of the Dragon, which is like his fantasy novel that he wrote for his kids. But there's one that's like, I wish I could remember what the hell it was called. But it's all at like a carnival in one summer, and it's like the carnival.
Joyland.
Is that the one where they think that there's a ghost inside the carnival ride, and it's they like. He meets like a little kid on the beach. Yeah, it's Joyland. That's a good one. I really enjoyed that book.
That was so. My friend, she doesn't like horror, and she knows that I like Stephen King. So she's like, "Is there a Stephen King book you think I should try?" And I was like, "Try Joyland first." I gave her my copy, and she loved it.
Yeah, it's only like, and it's a quick read. It's like I think it's like 200 pages, something like that.
The most.
Yeah, it's a. If you're like just looking for a quick Stephen King read, I think that's one of the top ones for me. I had a blast with that book.
He had one. I think it came out earlier this year, and I hated it. I don't usually hate Stephen King books, and I hated it. Which, it's such a great idea. It's this kid who sees ghosts, and the rules for the ghosts are they basically hang around until they just kind of slowly disappear.
Yeah.
And the other rule is when you ask them a question, they cannot lie to you. And so his mother is a literary agent, and her biggest client dies before he finishes his last book. So she brings him to the guy's house, makes him tell her the story. She writes the rest of the story and says that he delivered it before he died.
Yeah.
And her girlfriend is a cop, sees all of this happen. So there's like some stuff happens between his mother and the girlfriend. The cop breaks up with her and has like a drug problem. She comes and kidnaps the kid to try and get him to help her solve like a murder in order to get her career back. And it's really cool all the way up until the end. And something happens at the end where I was just like, what the fuck, Steven?
I mean, I know that it's still too early to tell just based on output of one versus the other. But man, his son can write. Joe Hill is like, I don't think that there's a bad Joe Hill book yet. I've read the Lock and Key comic series. I've read Nosferatu. I've read Heart-Shaped Box, and I've read Horns. But I was like, got no complaints, got no notes, no negative things to say about any of it.
He also does a lot of short stuff too. He has this one book called Strange Weather, which it has this book that is about gun violence that as soon as I think it's a novella at this point. It's like not a short story, so it's long enough that it's a novella. And I was reading it on the train. I finished it, and I closed the book, and I was in the quiet ride car, and I wanted to yell, and like I was so both impressed and angry and upset and all of this range of emotions that I just had to sit there and be quiet and think about it. And then it haunted me for like the longest time. And I still think about it randomly. I'm like, how did you write that? It's amazing.
One of the things that haunts me from reading is an author that I have mixed feelings towards in general, but Chuck Palahniuk.
Yeah.
Guts. His short story Guts is like, I can't.
I don't think I've read that one.
It's in Haunted.
Yeah.
It's one of the stories in Haunted. I remember reading it on the internet. Like, it was one of the, but it's literally just a person sits down on the suction of a pool and it starts to suck their intestines out of their ass, and it's like
Final Destination 4 stuff.
Yeah, it's like 5 pages of describing what's happening, and you're just like, I can't deal with this.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, it's like, I don't like this at all. So the book, you're expecting it to be available in March, but if people are interested in the book, which name of the book is definitely an important thing to throw out there.
It's called All That's Left in the World. It comes out March 8th. But it's available for pre-order now. You can also add it on Goodreads to remind yourself of when it's coming out. Yeah, and I have one of the things I was concerned about was, and I'm sure that my publisher's probably concerned about it too, but I haven't asked. I'm too scared of the answer. But I think I was nervous that people wouldn't want to read it because it's a pandemic. It's about a pandemic, and we're just coming out of a pandemic. So I had a couple of my friends go to Goodreads. There's a couple of people who are getting early copies, advanced reader copies, just to do reviews and stuff like that. And a lot of the people have, like, I think there's maybe 2 reviews that my friends sent me where they were concerned about that as well, but they still read it and they got through it and they were like, oh, it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be, because it's not just about this virus. Like, by the time the book starts, the virus is burned out. It's done. So it's basically just about, it's kind of a survival adventure story with these 2 kids, and they're just slowly they're trying to find like civilization. They're trying to figure out what is going on with their life now. And it's also just about them falling in love. It's a cute romance story as well. My editor came up with a way to pitch it. It's basically a teen version of Patrick and David from Schitt's Creek meets the apocalypse.
I love it.
So as soon as she said that, I was like, oh, that's perfect.
Well, Erik, I hope that people go and put that on their pre-order lists, put it on their Goodreads. Get ready. I'm excited to read the copy you sent me and then also do my due diligence to go to a bookstore and buy it on March 8th.
All That's Left in the World. You can buy it wherever you buy books.
And what's next for you? Is there more books on the horizon?
So when I sold this one, they bought whatever my next book was going to be, and I do have my editor's reading one book, but I haven't heard anything yet. So either they hate it or they just haven't read it yet. So.
It's one of those two.
It's one of those two.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Erik. I will let you
Thanks
go
for having
you got
me.
some dinner to get to.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.